It's an important job, and one lawmaker says it's too critical to leave it up to the Georgia General Assembly. We'll have more on a push to put reapportionment in the hands of an independent commission. Also tonight, should high school athletes be allowed to wear clothing that expresses their religious beliefs? A new bill says yes, but not everybody agrees. That and a lot more. Lawmaker starts right now. Welcome to Lawmakers. I'm Bill Nigut. It's day 17 of the 2016 session, and if you want to hear about some hot-button issues, you have absolutely come to the right place tonight. But first, let's look at the developments under the Gold Dome today. We're having some technical difficulties bringing in Shelby Lynn from the Capitol, so I will take you through the news down there, which includes an update on where we stand with Alan Peake's medical marijuana expansion bill and other news. So Representative Alan Peake, we've been following him closely on his expanded marijuana measure since day one. Today marked the first reading of HB 722, or the Haley's Hope Act, before the full House Judiciary Non-Civil Committee. Let's look.
On a question and answer session between Alan Peake and committee members, Peake read his bill aloud, explaining each section line by line.
Are we trying to do something that would allow citizens of this state access to a medicine that is proving successful, that is a lab-tested, safe medicine?
Citizens who we say can legally possess cannabis, medical cannabis, for medicinal purposes, can't get it. They have to break the law, commit civil disobedience to obtain it from somewhere else. And so all we're doing with this bill is solving that problem.
Peake made some changes to the bill after the first hearing before a House subcommittee several weeks ago.
Yeah, the biggest thing we did is we added the criminal element. I think, Ms. Travis, that's probably something. We added the criminal element to the bill to make sure there were penalties there for violation. We removed the medical cannabis task force. We'll get that in a little bit because it seemed to be redundant and seemed to be duplicative effort. We removed the medical composite board from being in the bill and gave all authority to the Department of Public Health.
Law enforcement officials have expressed concerns about expanding the state's Cannabis Oil Act. The new bill would allow marijuana grow operations in the state. It would also increase the number of illnesses that could use cannabis oil for treatment. The Georgia Sheriff Association is opposed to any expansion in the Medical Marijuana Act, but they didn't oppose the first bill last year.
I think the tracking of the marijuana from seed to growth to distribution is almost impossible to be able to do completely, and to control that and see everything going out the door.
And Walker County Sheriff Steve Wilson, who represents the Georgia Sheriff Association, says he's concerned that ultimately the Cannabis Oil Act could lead to a push to legalize recreational pot use.
That is my fear, that it could lead further down the road to other sources of laws being passed. I know Representative Peake said that he is stopping here, and I take him at his word, and I know that he has a passion for this.
That measure is still in committee, and we'll have another hearing before there's any scheduled vote, but it does remain controversial. In the Senate today, tougher laws for pimps are proposed for those who prey on children, and they're one step closer to reality. Lawmakers passed Senator Renee Unterman's bill that would make it a felony to force young girls and boys into prostitution.
It's hard to believe that in the year 2016 that we're to the point of pimping and pandering is a high and aggravated misdemeanor. It's time that we ratchet down and that we say on the streets of our major cities in the state of Georgia that we're not going to allow this horrific abuse, not just of children, but specifically with women and boys.
Senator Unterman's bill passed in the Senate with almost no discussion on a unanimous vote of 53 to nothing. It now goes to the House for consideration. Finally tonight, supporters of school prayer rallied at the Capitol today. They're backing a different religious liberty bill, this time by Representative Billy Mitchell. It would allow students to pray in school if they want to.
Back to school! Back to school! Back to school!
There was a football team which earlier this football season wanted to gather and pray before the game. Those students were admonished not to do so. What this law will do is set in very plain language that those kinds of expressions are allowable as long as they don't interfere with the academic day.
Mitchell says his bill does not force anyone to pray in school. It would not favor any one religion either, he says. He calls it a common sense measure that he says has bipartisan support. So that's our look at the Capitol news today. Let's talk to our panel about some of the really interesting issues going down under the Gold Dome right now. With us tonight is Jim Galloway, the political reporter and writer for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Representative Pat Gardner, she's a Democrat from Atlanta. And our friend Todd Rehm, a frequent guest on Political Rewind Radio. He's a Republican strategist and editor of the blog GeorgiaPundit.com. Thank you all for being here. Representative Gardner, I'd really love to start with you because you are working on a resolution that is different from all of the other issues we've discussed on this show in the first 17 days. You believe that it is time to remove the legislature from the process of redistricting state, Senate, and House districts, and congressional districts for that matter. Why is it time to do that?
Well, it's a topic that's on the minds of many constituents that I've talked to. It just doesn't happen to be a hot topic under the General Assembly, under the Golden Dome, because legislators want to be able to draw a district that's to their interest. I've had personal experience in the 15 years I've been in the General Assembly. I had a district that was drawn for Jim Martin that I fulfilled his second year of his term. The second year, the Democrats, in an effort to maintain control, created a 4-person district. This district, for me, went from the Dome to Dalrymple.
All right, so help us understand that. We don't have a map, unfortunately. So your district stretched from downtown Atlanta
all the way north of 285.
Okay.
Including everything in between. Well, the court threw the 4-person multi-member district out, and the court drew a district that I live in, which was House District 57, represented a lot of the in-town neighborhoods that I represent. So it was a really good district, I think, for the people who live there and for me personally, although it's really not about me, it's about the voters. When the 2010 census was finished and we had yet another redistricting, I have the same number, fortunately, but I have a district that looks kind of like a strip of bacon, starting in Morningside, going through downtown Atlanta, 4 blocks wide, then turning west, including Castleberry Hill, Pittsburgh, Mechanicsville, almost to Cascade Park.
So we should point out, Jim Galloway, let me bring you in. These are not done arbitrarily. District maps are drawn to maximize the strength of the majority party to take Democrats, in this case, like a Pat Gardner, and make sure that her district is very packed and doesn't bleed Democrats into Republican districts.
Right. Now, gerrymandering is something that everybody does. It dates back to the 1810 census. But in the case of this representative here, I know in the 2010 redistricting, there was a Republican effort to put white and black Democrats in the same district in the hopes that the white Democrats who are kind of more on the moderate side would be eliminated. And in many cases that worked. In Ms. Gardner's case, it did not.
Todd, we should say that this kind of political reapportionment is not the province of the Republicans who do happen to be in power now. When the Democrats are in control, they do it too. We well remember when Roy Barnes was governor, his chief of staff, Bobby Kahn, and the governor worked together to make sure that Democrats had the most favorable districts possible. And there are a lot of people who believe it's one of the reasons that Roy Barnes lost re-election.
It is, and I think that was that early 2000s where Representative Gardner had that 4-member district that I lived in was probably the most egregious redistricting we've seen. We should also note that during most of this period, we had the Voting Rights Act, which required pre-clearance by the Justice Department and had an effect of maximizing African-American majority districts. And that was part of what drove a lot of those redistricting decisions. The question of how much is too many African Americans in a district to where you're doing what's called packing, or are you diluting them so their votes so that they have fewer representatives?
So your answer to all of this, you hope to get rid of the politics in redistricting, is what?
Well, I think the reason that it's time to talk about it is that we have talked about the importance of maintaining the same number of minority members in the General Assembly, the same number of African American members. And we certainly have done that. But this time, at the same time, they look to maximize the partisan difference in ways that I believe are not reflective of our state. You know, it's arguable that our state is 55% Republican, 45% Democratic. Would you agree with that?
I'd say it's in that neighborhood.
In the neighborhood. I would like to be a little different, too. But in any case, when you make both houses, the House and the Senate, 2/3 of one party and 1/3 of another, that's not reflecting the partisan mix of our state. And for the first time, somewhere in some areas around the country, instead of looking only at the implications of the Voting Rights Act, they're beginning to look at partisan districts that were excessively partisan.
And this is a large part of dysfunction in Congress right now. You have I think there may in all of Congress there may be a dozen safe contentious district. Everything else is safely Democrat. Everything else else is safely Republican. And what happens then is that the political threat to a congressperson comes from within his or her own party, not from without. And so this contributes to polarization.
It does. It means that a Republican running in a safe Republican district is going to be forced usually to the right by a competitor who's going to challenge him in. At least that's the way the trend has gone in recent years, right?
In 2014, I believe not a single incumbent legislator lost to a member of the other party.
In fact, there are only 6 districts in the Georgia House that are even competitive, according to partisan differences.
And so, yes, the threat is always from within your party in most Georgia legislative districts. I'm not sure that most of the members who make it to the Gold Dome are really being pulled to the right as much as that's where they live anyway.
Okay, I got you. So but let's quickly come to the resolution you proposed.
Well,
you want to see an independent commission of some sort take on this responsibility.
Well, I can say to you that redistricting is one of the toughest things we do, and I don't think I have a magic answer, but it is a way to get people from both sides. There are always going to be politics in redistricting, and we don't want that necessarily to go away, but maybe we can alleviate some of the excesses which we've described. And since there are suits happening around the country, just yesterday or this last week in North Carolina, they threw out 2 of the congressional districts, and now they're forced to scramble around, redraw those districts by March 15th, which is quite a large burden for legislators who were in the middle of a legislative session. More importantly, Bill, for me, it is time for Georgia to have an intelligent discussions about some of these complicated issues that I don't know if anybody else hears from constituents, but I hear from a lot of constituents that they don't really like the way it's working, and they would like an opportunity to look at alternatives.
So let's put a period on this part of the conversation. The problem becomes, and Representative Gardner, I know you understand this, an independent commission has to be appointed by somebody, and that somebody is going to be someone political. So you can't quite get politics out of redistricting.
But you also, this is a resolution, so it requires a 2/3 vote in both chambers, and two-thirds of all legislators in the Capitol will have to decide, yes, this is something I want to give up.
So you have some bipartisan support for this?
I do. I do. Absolutely.
You have a Republican co-sponsor or a
yes,
Republican signer on the bill?
I do.
Who is that?
Jason Spencer.
Okay, interesting. One last note on this.
And all the Democrats are not in favor of this notion either.
Oh,
by the way.
because they hope to take control back.
Right.
Let's make one other point here. Your district changes started happening right around the time that computers started drawing these maps. It used to be the incredibly complex task of trying to gerrymander was very difficult. It wasn't easy. Computers now, like that, draw the maps that people can...
You can target specific driveways now.
In the early,
and they do.
In the early 90s, when I worked at the Georgia Republican Party, one of the things I did was go to the state archives and look at some of the past maps. And you had on file literally maps drawn on napkins that were submitted as part
I'm
of the
sure
process.
that's true.
All right, we're going to watch this with great interest because it's a really important issue.
Thank you.
For
I think
the
it's
people
important.
Of Georgia.
Thank you for bringing it to the
Sure.
forefront.
All right, let's look. We're on the verge of a really exciting day in politics. The New Hampshire primary tomorrow. Republican lawmakers down at the state capitol who are supporting Senator Marco Rubio's bid for the White House got together on the south wing of the state capitol today. They were led by Georgia Congressman Austin Scott, who's Rubio's campaign manager right here in the state.
Senator Rubio serves on the Intelligence Committee. I've watched his work on that committee, and I can tell you he's a fact-based decision maker. He's the candidate with the experience and judgment to be commander-in-chief from day one. My respect for him comes from my work on armed services with him on the Intel Committee. He's the candidate with the best plan to destroy ISIS, halt Iran's nuclear program, and protect our friend Israel.
Todd, I want to come to you on this. Most observers, Republican and Democrat, felt that Rubio had a very hard time, the Republican debate in New Hampshire Saturday night. And because you're a Republican, let me ask you, do you feel that this is going to, whether he does well in New Hampshire or not, we'll see. But is this going to haunt him moving forward? They're going to be in Georgia on March 1st.
I think one of the things that's notable about Senator Rubio's campaign is that they don't seem to have the built-out network that the Cruz campaign does, and they don't have the airplane and press conferences that Donald Trump does. And so he's got to find a path that takes him past all those problems. I think that his biggest challenge is going to be March 1st as we enter the SEC primary, and he's going to have to be running campaigns in 7 or 8 states.
So, Jim, we talked about this a little before we went on the air. I cannot recall a debate in which one candidate went after another candidate. We've seen moderators do it, but the way Chris Christie went after Marco Rubio Saturday night, he eviscerated him. It's the only word to use.
And Rubio kept coming across with the same lines, and so Chris Christie kept coming after him, criticizing his canned statements. It was painful to watch.
So this event today at the Capitol, the timing was, it maybe would have happened anyway, but it was the right time.
It was the right time for it because it was an attempt to change the subject. Austin Scott is a big Rubio fan. He worked Iowa for him and was part of that effort that got him into third, almost second place in Iowa. So that part's important. Rubio now has a list of state lawmakers that I think is longer, if I'm not mistaken, longer than Ted Cruz's, and that becomes important with a ground game because you're tapping other people's networks when you move into a state like this.
I think there's an event with Hillary Clinton at the or not with her, but on her behalf at the Capitol coming up. Are you in the Clinton camp? Have you already?
Absolutely. It is time for us to recognize the kinds of intelligence and experience that she has. I mean, to be a woman running for this office, you have to be twice as good. And it is my opinion that she is twice as good
right.
on almost any measure you'd mention.
All right. I'll tell you what, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, what I really think we ought to be looking at right now, because we have a Metro Atlanta legislator right here, let's talk about MARTA and the proposal for a tax that would allow communities in the metro area initially to extend MARTA into their neighborhoods. Before we get to that, how well do you know your lawmakers? David Wilkerson is a Democrat from Estelle. He represents House District 38. He was sworn in to the Georgia General Assembly in 2011. Wilkerson was born in Fort Dix, New Jersey, the son of a first-class sergeant. He tells us that during high school and college, he worked at Six Flags Great Adventure in New Jersey, where he held down a variety of positions, including managing the recording studio and having to guess people's age or weight. That last skill might not be popular in his current profession. We're back with more lawmakers in just a moment.
Next time on Finding Your Roots.
Did you have any idea you had Australian roots?
None at all. Three modern visionaries.
This is miraculous.
Look back in time.
This is amazing. I would not have guessed that.
On the next Finding Your Roots.
Tonight at 10 on GPB.
Did you know that on this date, February 8th, in 1751, Georgia's first provincial parliament adjourned after submitting a list of grievances to the trustees in London? Among their top concerns, a fear that if the trustees surrendered their charter early, Georgia would be annexed to South Carolina.
They got it.
Jim Galloway was not here, contrary to popular opinion, to cover that event. But he is here with us tonight.
I came the next year.
Jim Galloway from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Democratic Representative Pat Gardner, and Republican strategist and editor of GeorgiaPundit.com, Todd Rehm. Pat Gardner said, tell me about your daily newsletter. And we all said, you should get it because it's a really good look at what's happening in politics, as is the Political Insider, which Jim Galloway oversees. So once again, we do have guns taking a big chunk of the controversy down at the Capitol. We're going to talk about campus carry on this show this week. But right now, Representative Pat Gardner is here, and we're going to talk in a minute with her. But first, let's talk to Ted Terry. He's the mayor of Clarkston. They're the home to two college campuses, and he says the push for guns on campus is purely political. Let's listen.
2 years ago, we were talking about this issue, and here we are again today, and the unifying variable is that this is an election year. Simple as that. What is the point of passing policies that don't actually solve the problems we're having?
The governing body of our university says, no, we have no desire for campus carry. As far as I can hear from faculty here and across the state, they're saying, no, we do not want campus carry. As far as I can tell, students across the state are saying, no, we do not want campus carry. And our law enforcement on our universities are saying, no, we do not want campus carry. So who is for it? And I think the simple answer comes in three letters: NRA.
So tomorrow night on Lawmakers, Representative Rick Jaspers, who's really doing the heavy lifting to pass campus carry, will be here to talk about why he thinks that measure is important. But while we have Representative Pat Gardner here, let's do a quick take on your gun measure. You're proposing a statute that would require background checks at gun shows. It remains very controversial.
Well, I mean, in fact, background checks do occur at gun shows all the time. Background checks are the letter of the law for legitimate gun sellers. In recent months, the FBI now has a 24/7 hotline. So the gun shows that are on the weekend now have the availability of an FBI person who can do the background checks on the spot for them, and I think it's time that all gun sellers should be treated the same.
All right, well, we'll watch how that goes forward, because Republicans have obviously not been clamoring to see any more gun legislation that works against what they see as the free ability to buy a gun or carry a gun. We'll watch that develop. Jim and Todd, let me bring you in on this. We've watched a strange thing happen with Brandon Beach's bill to allow local jurisdictions to raise as much as a half-penny sales tax to extend MARTA rail, right?
Right.
It first went into a committee with a completely unfriendly committee chair. He had to introduce a second bill to get it in the hands of a more friendly committee, and now we're hearing maybe there's some deal working.
Right. You had SB 313, which was passed to the Local Government Affairs Committee. We call it SLOGO, which is chaired by John Albers of Roswell, a neighbor of Brandon Beach, who's from Alpharetta. But Albers is kind of a commuter rail skeptic. Mm-hmm. So Beach asked for the bill back. Albers said no, finders keepers. And so Beach introduced another one, SB 330, which is now in Senate Transportation. I think we're going to see the dilemma resolved in the next 24 hours.
Does that suggest to you that there's more momentum to allow this to go forward than some skeptics might think?
I think very much so. And one of the key elements here is when this does hit the Senate Transportation Committee, probably sometime later on this week, you're going to see the Metro Atlanta Chamber come out with a poll. They showed it to me. It's been around since October, and they've been quietly passing it on to legislators, which says it's a poll that says 73% of registered voters in Fulton and DeKalb want to see MARTA rail expanded, and that includes 58% among Republicans. But the key point in this is that same poll says 49% of those same voters would oppose any kind of transportation package for a penny sales tax if it did not include rail.
Very important. Todd Rehm, we should point out, of course, that Brandon Beach is a Republican. But you've made the point on Political Rewind on any number of occasions that it's one thing to be a Republican in Metro Atlanta, but those Republicans in outlying parts of the state couldn't care less about whether MARTA is expanded or not, right? In other words, you're going to have some friendly Republicans and others who don't want anything to do with this, right?
I think that's true. And one of the points we made earlier that a legislator's real audience is those within his own party, especially in Metro Atlanta. Your Senate districts, your state house districts are dominated by voters, not just registered voters, but primary voters in your own party. I'm a DeKalb County resident. I use MARTA, but one of the things that continues to gall me is that we're kind of all alone with Fulton County and Clayton County in paying for it. And if they want to expand it, I'd like to see some more in DeKalb County. What they're talking about is mainly expansion in Fulton County, but I'd like to see some of the other folks pitch in as well.
Meaning who?
Gwinnett County,
gotcha.
Cobb County.
Right, and quite frankly, that's the idea of pushing. There are two major bids to push MARTA east into the CDC Emory University complex
from DeKalb County into
which is very, very employee intensive, and then push it north beyond the Chattahoochee River, and that they hope would bring Gwinnett and Cobb, at least make them think a little bit more heavily about transit.
All right, I have to. We're really running out of time. Democrats, for the most part, like the idea of
we
this.
like the penny if transit is included.
We have virtually run out of time. The conversation that I'd hoped we were going to have about religious slogans on high school uniforms, we'll hold that. It's going to be an issue around for a while, so we will get to it as Lawmakers goes forward in the weeks ahead. Thank you all so much for being here for an interesting conversation tonight. That does it for day 17 of the 2016 session. 23 legislative days to go. We'll be back tomorrow night for day 18 and a deeper dive into an issue that always brings out strong opinion. As I said, we'll talk campus carry in depth. In the meantime, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Twitter at GPB News. Go to our website, gpb.org/lawmakers, where you can see full episodes of the show. And please, be sure to catch Political Rewind on GPB Radio. We're live on Wednesdays at 2 o'clock and Fridays at 3 o'clock. Todd Rehm, Jim Galloway are among the a panel of insiders who provide us so much insight with what's happening in national and local and state politics. Thanks so much for joining us tonight. I'm Bill Nigut. We'll see you tomorrow night for another edition of Lawmakers. Good night.